This thing needs a head gasket. And I've been putting it off for months. And now I hope to put it off for another couple of months. So we're going to give Blue Devil head gasket sealer a shot. All right, so before I actually get into any of this, I have to give you the background because I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to come across the same type of situation. So I bought this Jeep back in January or February this year. And it was on Facebook Marketplace, $1,500, running, driving, no real dents or anything like that, no rust. So I was like, $1,500. Yeah, I don't care what's wrong with it. I'll take it. So I contacted them. I says, will it make it back to Murfreesboro? So they live 90 miles away from here. So I says, will it make it back to Murfreesboro? And he says, yeah, there won't be any problem. It'll get there. So I says, I just took a crack at this because I really didn't want to make a trip out to pick it up. I says, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you the $1,500 tonight if you can get that thing to me. So they called me back a few minutes later and they said, sure, we could do that. We'll deliver it. Good. All right, so they deliver it. I give them the money. They drive away. I'm like, what could possibly be wrong with this thing that it made it all the way here, almost 100 miles, and it's clean? Well, when I start looking around under the hood, I see why. It has clearly had some cooling system issues. It had a new water pump. You could tell the top of the motor was taken apart at some point. The radiator was new, the water pump was new, fresh gasket around the thermostat. You could see that this thing had been worked on. But it also had stains everywhere. You know, take this off. It had these rusty stains everywhere, which told the story of, oh jeez, look at this. Okay. It told the story of neglect. It told the story of somebody pouring untold bottles of sealer and radiator sealer and God only knows what else in here. It's got problems, it's got issues. All right, no problem, I'll deal with it. So I drive it for a few weeks and everything is fine, and then it starts overheating on me. So first it splits the radiator. Okay, fine, I got another radiator, I'll throw it in there. When I take the one that it's split out, it's a brand new radiator, it was clogged with just sealer. Sealer, I mean, just, you couldn't believe the amount of sealer that was in there. All right, fine, right? Drive it for another couple of weeks and the thermostat clogs. Okay, I could see that, no problem. So just as time goes on, I'm having more and more cooling system issues. The heater core is blocked solid. There's nothing getting through there. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to address this eventually. But no matter how many times I drain the cooling system and refill it, or it drains itself actually, and I refill it, there's still just, the radiator cap comes out looking like that every time. And actually, that's not bad. So the problem with this, and the reason why I'm not just going to dive in and change the head gasket or the head, because I believe it might have a warped head. It looks like they might have done a head gasket on this at one point, and it's still leaked anyway, so it's possible the head is warped or damaged. Either way, the bottom of the block is so completely filled with sealer. They probably poured this stuff in there for years. Everything is so clogged with the sealer that to change the head gasket, I'm still leaving all sorts of other issues on the table. So I'm putting this off until either A, I just decide to get rid of this thing, or B, I decide to pull the motor out and actually give it a complete rebuild and flush and boil and do everything necessary to clean up the cooling system. So you get the general idea. It's got issues. So I figured, let's give this a shot. Let's give the Blue Devil a shot. Now, I've already done a video on head gasket in a can. Sodium silicate is the main ingredients here. And what happens is the sodium silicate finds a temperature differential. So you've got the heat of the combustion chamber and you've got the relative coolness of the cooling system. And the sodium silicate finds that heat differential and solidifies. It becomes like a glass-like substance. They claim that it's a permanent fix. It's not a permanent fix, it's a Band-Aid. But that's all I want. I just want a Band-Aid for right now because the weather is about to start dropping down into the freezing zone. And I don't want to crack the block. I don't want to have it disabled like that. So I'm going to give this a shot and see if it won't hold some antifreeze over the winter. And then we can address it in the spring. So, all right. And I've already talked about this on that other video, but let's go over it again. So a head gasket can go in many different ways. When a head gasket blows between the two cylinders, there's nothing you can pour in there that's going to fix it. That's just a plain compression leak. On this one, we have a break someplace in that engine, someplace in the head gasket, where you've got a cooling system passage and a combustion chamber, and the area between those two is etched away or just damaged, or the head is warped just enough to allow coolant to go into the combustion chamber. And this has all of the classic symptoms. So it'll be full of coolant. In this case, water, because for the last couple of months I've only been pouring water in it. Forget antifreeze. So what will happen is, while the engine is running, compression gases will get blown into the cooling system and eventually start blowing that out of the overflow bottle. And you can see the condition of the overflow bottle is just, it's disgusting. At that point, it'll overheat. Now, in the meantime, that's with the engine running. You've got compression gases being pushed into the cooling system. But now you shut the engine off. And at that point, the pressure in the cooling system is greater than the pressure in the cylinders, which is nothing, and the water gets pushed into the cylinder. So when you first start this engine, it'll misfire. It'll only run on 5 cylinders. That's what we have here. But like I said, if it get me through the winter and hold some actual antifreeze so the thing doesn't ice up and crack on me, I'll be thrilled. So, Blue Devil head gasket sealer. This is a 3-gallon cooling system. It's a 32 ounce or 1 quart, which is the ratio that it calls for. And let's see, going through the instructions here. Directions. Okay, cooling system must be clean. It's as clean as it's going to get, okay? And free flowing before applying Blue Devil head gasket sealer. I guess it's free flowing. All right. Step 2, remove thermostat. It hasn't had a thermostat in it in 6 months. Okay. 3, fill cooling system with water. All right. So I know there's some coolant in there, and it's water because it's all that's been put in here for the last few months. Leave enough room for the recommended amount of Blue Devil. Okay. 4, important, engine must be cold before you begin. So I mean, it's cold. It's ambient temperature. All right. Important, pour slowly! Exclamation mark. With the engine idling. Okay. Slowly pour Blue Devil into radiator. Take 1 minute pour time for entire bottle. 30 seconds for a half bottle. After pouring Blue Devil, slowly, they emphasize the slow part of this, let vehicle idle with cap on for 50 minutes. Not an hour. Not an hour. 50 minutes. You do not need to flush the system a second time after the process is complete. Okay. Let engine cool before installing new thermostat. I'm not going to put another thermostat in here. Drain enough fluid to refill with compatible antifreeze. Okay, so after I'm done with this, after it's run for the hour, I'll pop the bottom radiator hose off, get as much water out of it as possible, top it off in antifreeze, and we'll see if this is going to work. Again, like, this is like the least scientific demonstration you could possibly ask for. Because again, you can't really see this. It's very hard to quantify what's going on here. So you just got to take my word for it. And I'm clearly not sponsored by Blue Devil or anybody else, ever. We never do any type of endorsements or anything like that on this channel. So you kind of got to take my word for it. And all right, so let's do this. Let's get this out of here. Have some water just in case we need to top it off. Um, so, and again, I think somebody already did a head gasket on here based on how things are moved around. Um, but this is supposed to work on a warped or cracked cylinder head. Could be warped, could be cracked. Leaking heater core, clogged solid. Leaking freeze plugs. I don't think freeze plugs can leak on this. I think they're so buried under the mountains of sealer that I don't think they could leak if they wanted to. So let's fire it up and pour this stuff in slowly. All right. So it says a minute to pour this in. Breaking the seal. Okay. Let me get a funnel. Maybe I should have set a timer so I know when it's a minute. Oh, okay, this is pretty boring, right? I'll tell you a story. A little joke. No. My head is completely occupied with slowly pouring the Blue Devil in. Stop for a second. I guess I could have looked at the timer on the camera, right, but I didn't. Unscientific. Do not try this at home. That's got to be close to a minute. Okay. All right, so now let's top this thing off with water. Oh, the bubbles. It's got the telltale head gasket bubbles. You know, you watch the cooling system and the coolant smells like exhaust. Okay, sorry about that. The camera shut off because it got too hot. But this didn't, and you really didn't miss anything. I'm just slowly pouring water into this. Still getting tons of bubbles. You know, you got two different kinds of bubbles when you do this. You have the bubbles when the air is getting displaced in the cooling system, and you'll get the big bloop bloop kind of bubbles. And then you've got the head gasket leak bubbles, which are these like tiny little bubbles that come up rapidly. Let's see if we can capture that. You see the little bubbles? That's classic head gasket. I can't believe I'm filming water going into the radiator. Yeah, those rapid little bubbles, that's classic telltale head gasket. Alright, it appears to be full. So I'm going to put this cap on. Just rinse this cap off a little bit so it seals. We'll put this cap on. And now we're going to let it idle for 50 minutes. Not an hour. 50 minutes. So that's idling for 30 minutes so far. You gotta look at the temperature gauge. All right, 2:15. So it's running at about 2:15. So far so good. A little hotter than I'd like to see it. All right, 19 minutes to go, not 21 minutes. What are you supposed to do at the end of the 50 minutes? It doesn't make that clear. I guess you could drive it after 50 minutes. 18 minutes to go. Okay, that's 50 minutes. Why just 50 minutes? Why not an hour? Why didn't you just make it an hour? All right, that's 50 minutes. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get in this thing, I'm gonna drive it around a little bit, 2-3 miles, and then I'm going to see, I'll know for sure whether or not this has worked. Because after you've driven it a couple of miles, you shut it off. What will happen is when you go to restart it, 10 minutes later, it'll misfire. Because that one cylinder is going to suck in water, or the water is going to get forced into that one cylinder, and it takes a little bit for it to recover. So when you first start it, after sitting 10 minutes, 15 minutes, it'll always misfire. So let's take it for a ride, we'll park it, let it sit for 10, and then we'll see what happens when we go to restart it. So I drove it a few miles, really easy, you know, just above idle, not pushing it or anything like that. And I've been sitting here zenning out in nature for about 15 minutes so far. So I'm starting to get anxious. I can't sit quietly for too long. So let's fire this thing up and see if there's any trace of a misfire. So far so good, definitely. So I'm happy with that. Over the last few weeks, since the leak has gotten really bad, anytime you run this thing up to like operating temperature and then shut it off, let it sit for 10 or 15 minutes, anytime you would restart it, you'd have a dead miss and there would be water and steam coming out the exhaust. And right now I have neither a dead miss or any signs of moisture back there. So I'm going to call this a tentative win. There's no way to know if this is, it's going to live up to, you know, its intended purpose. Is it actually going to completely, permanently fix this? I doubt it. But if this will get me a couple of months, get me through the winter months, where I can keep antifreeze in it and not crack the block and crack the head and all of that, I'm going to call that a win. There's no permanent fix in a can, but sometimes you can buy some time. And I know this isn't a scientific analysis like Project Farm would do, but I think this is I think it's a fair review done by somebody in an average situation, and in this case I'm really the average person because I'm just trying to milk some time out of a hurt puppy. So we'll see what happens. I'll run it around for the rest of the day. If everything looks good, I'll dump this water and Devil solution out, replace it with antifreeze, and we'll go from there. If you don't get an update on this, it means it worked. If you do get an update, we'll probably do a post-mortem analysis on it. I'll pull the head and we'll look at the gasket and we'll see what actually happened. But in the meantime, like I said, I'm going to call this a win. That it hasn't done this in a very long time. So something positive is going on in the cooling system of this engine. Go Blue Devil. I'll see you tomorrow.